Wait. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Vilshewski.
Here.
Locher.
Here.
Funkhauser.
Here.
Readers.
Nay.
Rulas.
Here.
Peterson. We have a quorum.
Any amendments to tonight's agenda? All right. Well, welcome everyone. We do have a couple of presentations this evening. So we're going to start with swearing in of a couple of officers. We'll start with Sergeant Carlisle. Will you please come forward? And Bob Johnson, head of our Fire and Police Commission, and Chief Hart. I know Chief would like to say a few words.
Garrett started with the Yorkville Police Department in 2007 as a patrol officer. Prior to that, he earned his bachelor's degree from Northern Illinois University. Garrett served in many different assignments, including patrol officer, detective, and investigator with Kendall County CPAC. Garrett served as an undercover officer for a year prior to his promotion. Garrett has also been a member of the Kendall County Special Response Team for over 5 years. Garrett is a natural leader in our department, and he currently serves as patrol sergeant and training coordinator. We look forward to the next chapter of Garrett's career.
Please raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, individual Garrett Carlisle,
Have been promoted to the office of sergeant
having been promoted to the office of sergeant
in the United City of Yorkville,
in the United City of Yorkville,
in the county of Kendall, aforesaid,
in the county of Kendall, aforesaid,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of sergeant
the duties of the office of sergeant
of the United City of Yorkville Police Department
of the United City of Yorkville Police Department
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
And do you have any family you want to bring up for a picture?
There's quite a bit, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if we got time for all this. There's not much
Mush.
Just keep smiling. We got it.
Okay, next we're going to swear in Deputy Chief Fizemeyer, and I guess the rest of the room is your family.
Barrett joined the police department in 2005. He was our very first cadet. I remember he was fresh out of high school and walked in the door. I remember saying back then, Barrett has an incredible work ethic, and I remember saying someday he's going to be chief. So looks like he's getting there pretty quick. Barrett started in 2005 as a police cadet. While in the cadet program, he earned his associate's degree in criminal justice from Wabansie Community College. In 2008, he was sworn in as a patrol officer. Barrett served as a patrol officer, school liaison officer, field training officer. In 2014, he was assigned to Kendall County CPAC. Barrett served undercover for 2 years, and in 2015, he was assigned to the criminal intelligence team, assigned as a gang and narcotics officer. In 2016, he was promoted to sergeant and supervised the criminal intelligence team. Bear graduated from Northwestern University School of Police Staff and Command in 2018, and he is currently enrolled in Arizona University, finishing up his bachelor's degree.
I state your name.
I, Bear Fitzmeyer,
Having been appointed to the office of Deputy Chief of Police
having been appointed to the office of Deputy Chief of Police
in the United City of Yorkville,
in the United States of Yorkville,
in the County of Kendall, aforesaid,
in the county of Kendall, aforesaid,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United
the
States,
Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Deputy Chief of Police
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Deputy Chief of Police
of the United City of Yorkville Police Department
of the United States of Yorkville Police Department
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Okay, for this next item, I asked Alderman Frieders if you would do a drum roll, please. We have the bid openings for 111 West Manson.
All right, so the last time we did a bid opening for the jail, I did my best to summarize them. I'm going to try to do that as I'm reading a multi-page document, but we are going to immediately make copies. We'll hand them out to members of the public and then to the city council for discussion or for deliberation at a later date. So the first proposal we have was received via email today. Its listed principals are Peter McKnight and Carrie Coles out of a Chicago LLC address with addresses in South Carolina. There's a brief review of their executive team, their vision for the property, a narrative of feasibility, a construction budget estimate with pre-construction phase, construction phase, interior phase, for a total estimated construction budget of $480,224. A lending commitment letter, a project plan with a schedule of potential phases and dates, a initial cash offer of $1,000, and then a commitment to complete the project in accordance with the narrative, and some additional information from a solar power provider. So with that, I'm going to take this, hand it over to Aaron. He's going to run some copies. Back in a second. So that's one proposal. Second proposal.
Drum roll, please.
Thank you. Is from Imperfect Angels, which is an organization out of Aurora. The contact person is Jatara Perry. There's a brief narrative of their team in the organization. There's a project narrative in there, vision for the property, talking about commercial suites, a narrative on a community resource center proposal, an attached structure, a site plan, some additional information and requests, so it looks like some commitments and proposals to the city. A section on financials, purchase price of $500, estimated rehab costs of $250,000 plus, and then another section of $5,000. A request for planned financial assistance, TIF assistance, Yorkville, tax credit assistance programs if applicable. Some grants, that they think that they're eligible for. A long list of grants and foundations. Some local sponsors, including Mutual Ground, Moose Heart, Hesed House, and some local organizations and business. A 5-year business pro forma post-completion, that's in an attachment. A construction timeline with details of 4 phases. A nice site plan of the second floor, the first floor, an overview of the financial condition of the organization, and last but not least, the performer for the building. So that's the proposal from Imperfect Angels. We'll do the same. We'll make copies available immediately.
Okay, and then we'll circle back around and have some discussion once everyone has a chance to look at some of the copies. Okay, we do have some public hearings this evening. So we will go into public hearing for the third amendment to the annexation agreement, O'Keefe subdivision, dated September 26, 2006, amended June 10th, 2008, and May 1st, 2012, by and between Raging Waves LLC Series A and the United City of Yorkville, Kendall County, Illinois. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this annexation amendment? Anyone from council? Yes, sir.
I did have a brief conversation with the owners of Raging Waves. Part of the conversation during the EDC meeting was why. We did see there was the purchase of the 20 acres, additional 20 acres, immediate work to expand that parking to the west. And then I saw a photo, which I was sworn to secrecy, showing the next 3 phases. And I'm excited to see them improve their property, which will eventually make 47 even slower, which is awesome. But yes, I think we have a jewel in the Nile of Yorkville, and I think we need to continue to support them and also realize that the money they're collecting, I'd say about 90% of those people spending money are from outside of the area. And the number of jobs of local high school students that work at this place is incredible. So I think we need to continue to support them. And the next time there is a movie with Parks and Rec from Yorkville and the Oswego Park District, I assume everybody here in attendance will show up there because the place is awesome and they're doing a lot of cool stuff for Yorkville. So I'm fully behind this.
Well said, Alderman Friers. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Just to make the point, I don't think any of us like to add taxes on anybody's properties, but this is something that the developer actually came to us on an extension for their own use. This goes back to them. So this actually is less than what they originally allowed under the original annexation agreement, but they asked for an extension so that they can utilize that with the planned extension or the planned expansion of the property, which looking at the renderings of what they're doing, this is going to be a great enhancement to the facility. They've talked about the Route 47 improvements that they need to deal with internally to keep people moving. The fact that they've been at capacity is a great testament to the facility, so this is great that they're actually growing in our community.
Anyone else? If nothing else, we will close public hearing on that annexation amendment. Thank you, Randy and Don. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Okay, we will go into public hearing for an amendment to that certain annexation agreement, Windmill Farms, dated May 27th, 2008, by and among Jake Lane Group LLC, original owner, and the United City of Yorkville, Kendall County, Illinois, for the purpose of amending the Windmill Farms annexation agreement related to the zoning of certain parcels into the B3 General Business District and the A1 Agricultural District. The purpose of the amendment is to allow for the future rezoning to establish and operate a nursery and garden center with retail store on the proposed B3 zone parcels and an accessory building for the storage of equipment and landscape materials in the proposed A1 zone parcel. The real property is located south of Illinois Route 71 and north of Illinois Route 126. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this annexation agreement amendment? Anyone from the council? Okay, hearing no comments, we will close public hearing on that annexation agreement amendment. And the last public hearing is for the proposal, we'll go into public hearing for proposed fiscal year 2019-2020 budget. Anyone from the public would like to comment on the proposed fiscal year 2019-2020 budget? Anyone from the council? Okay, we will close public hearing for the proposed fiscal year 2019-2020 budget, and we will see it in 2 weeks, and we need to pass it before the end of April. Now, do we have any citizen comments on any items that are on the agenda this evening?
Hello,
Hello, please sign in and state your name, please.
Robin Sutcliffe, 412 Park Street, Yorkville. Let me just write my name here. I just want to come in again and say how much I appreciate everything that's happening with the old jail. It was many months ago that we first came in, and when we realized that it was in jeopardy. This is a great building, it's very historical, and we just want to make sure that somebody is able to use it. It was always our goal from the very beginning for the building just to stay standing and to be used. It was, so everything that's happening today, people who have looked at taking it over, people who have put an RFP in, people who have worked on this project, I appreciate all of it. And as somebody who has a business in a historic building here in town, Fox's Ice Cream, I think whatever goes in there, whatever the council decides, is going to be a great addition to Yorkville.
Thank you.
Todd Millern, unincorporated Yorkville. There was a lot of effort put into bringing the public's attention to the need to preserve our history here in town. And we have a perfect example of that across the street from the old jail. And you have two offers there, two serious offers, it looks like. I would ask you to do your due diligence and give these people fair consideration, and pick one and allow them to make their vision come into being. And let's repurpose that building and give these individuals a chance to thrive and grow in Yorkville. And whatever vision they have for that building, let's give it a chance. So do your due diligence, kick the tires, and you know, I guess pick one that you like, and let's give them a chance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Johanna Byram, and I live on State Street, and I'm with the Yorkville Historic Preservation Society. And again, want to thank you for putting out the RFP and letting we find interested parties who want to save the building. I think I've just recently been going through since 1996 when the building last had any use and looking at all the newspaper articles and things in the county board minutes. And what kind of struck me as funny is remembering going back to that time when we saved the courthouse. All the individuals who on the board would say, we're not going to spend any money on the building, we're going to tear it down, the best thing would happen if we tore the building down. And then once it was restored, everybody's like, well, I always was into saving that building. So now every one of you who said that here, I look forward to reading your comments in the newspaper in 5 or 6 years. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Oh, sure, I'll come.
Okay.
Hi, I have signed in before. My name is Irene Kaufman, and I live in Autumn Creek subdivision, and I don't see Jason here tonight. I was going to say hi to him. Yeah, well, anyway, he's down the street from me, and I'm here to talk about saving the Kendall County Jail. And we moved here, I consider myself a newbie, but we've been here 5 years. But we came from Aurora, and it was just enlightening and nice to come to a small, you guys don't like the word village, but you like the United City, you know, so. But anyway, it was just a beautiful little town. We're very, very happy here. And I thought, oh, this is nice. I was reading articles about they were doing fundraisers and everything to save the old Kendall County Jail. And I thought, oh, that's great. Oh, that's wonderful. And then last year, a few articles started coming up that you guys were going to demolish it. And I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to ruin a historic building? I mean, Yorkville has so much history. It's on the river, and I mean, you were the start of everything in the state. And I was very appalled. I could not believe that they would want to do something like this, or you guys, or whoever was going to do it, but I was reading about it. But anyway, I'd like to turn your attention a little bit to Joliet's prison over there and what they have done. It's 165 years old, and in 2002, the governor said, I don't want the responsibility, it's too much money, we're just going to abandon it. So they left it. And it was just the same thing that's happened to the jail here. It just deteriorated. It even had arson, it had vandalism, it just went horrendously, just horrible in condition. And so the city of Joliet said, you know what, we will take over control, give us control. I don't know, I have no idea if money was passed or not, but they wanted control of the Joliet prison. And they, along with their historical society, they partnered, and I accent the word partnered because it's very important that the city of Joliet and their historical society worked together to raise money, to get grants, to get public money, to get private money, to do all they could to restore it. And it's quite large. It was in the millions. But right now, what they have is a tourism attraction. And they have lots and lots of tourists. And plus, they've had movies made there, and they've had TV programs made there. And of course, it's not as big of this, but just think of the possibilities that could be if we preserve this historic site. You have the beautiful courthouse right beside it, and the jail, and you could make the jail another attraction that would bring tourism. If you produce that and say, hey, we've got things over here, maybe a little tea shop in there, or little small shops of some kind along with it, along with a tour through the whole building. I just think it should be saved, and we should not destroy. I really think, and we've had a couple proposals tonight, maybe you need to read them over. I have no idea what they're about, but read them over, think carefully, think very carefully, and we really need to preserve the legacy of what you do have here in Yorkville. You are unique because you are an older town, and you've got lots of beautiful homes. I hope something is being done about all the historic homes, that they go on to the historic, on your historic, preserving, anyway, the history of Aurora, but putting it on the National Historic Record. That's what I'm trying to say. But please consider not demolition for this building. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Lisa Wilancevich. I think most of you know me already. Excuse me. I'm representing the Yorkville Historic Preservation Society. We are very happy to hear that there are entities that want to preserve the building. We look forward to seeing what they have to offer the community. I would like to thank all of you for creating the RFP and actually putting this out here and having the vision that maybe the building could be saved. That is all we wanted, always, and to save our history, to show it to our children and our grandchildren what is possible in a time that Yorkville was the center of the state and hosted travelers to that sheriff's residence and jailhouse. And I've seen what is happening in Joliet. I've actually had contact with the Joliet Historical Society that would very much like to come and speak with all of you about the economic impact and the tourism that has happened in Joliet since they've reopened their prison. It is phenomenal. I want to thank again, all of you for doing this. I'd like to thank the people that are putting in the RFP to actually save the jail. And we are actually offering our help to the new owner in any capacity that the Yorkville Historic Preservation Society can do to make their efforts successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa, do you remember, you sent me an article about the Joliet Jail?
Yes.
A Chinese tour group.
Yes.
Bought, I don't know, it was hundreds or thousands of tour tickets.
Yes.
For the jail.
That came directly from, excuse me, that came directly from Mike, who is the economic director for the Joliet prison. Actually, he runs the museum, and I met him quite by accident. Excuse me. I'm just getting over being sick. I met him quite by accident. My husband, Michael, was playing at the museum, and I was admiring what was in the museum, and the gentleman that had hired him to play was actually the man that spearheaded the Joliet prison. I told him, I said, I wish I knew how to do all of this, what you're doing, and he said, lots of fundraising. But yes, he did send me that article, and it has had quite a bit of impact on them, and he would come and see you if you'd like him to. I can actually send his information to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad you read it.
Yeah, no, it's a good article. Anyone else? Okay, so we will circle back to that in a few minutes. Right now, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Bilshuski.
Aye.
Funkhauser.
Aye.
Trulis.
Aye.
Pocher.
Aye.
Readers. Motion carries.
Okay, we have no minutes for approval under mayor's report. We do have a couple of proclamations. I know there are a couple of ladies here for the Poppy Days proclamation, if you'd like to come forward. And I will read the proclamation and then you can go. So this is the proclamation of Poppy Days. Whereas America is a land of freedom, preserved and protected willingly and freely by citizen soldiers. Whereas millions who have answered the call to arms have died on the field of battle. Whereas a nation of peace must be reminded of the price of war and the debt owed to those who have died in war. Whereas the red poppy has been designated as a symbol of sacrifice in all lives and all wars. Whereas the American Legion Post 489, the American Legion Auxiliary Unit 489 have pledged to remind America annually of this debt through the distribution of the memorial flower, so that May 6th through 12th, 2019 may serve as Poppy Awareness Days. Therefore, I, Gary J. Galinsky, Mayor of the United City of Yorkville, do hereby proclaim Poppy Awareness Days in the United City of Yorkville and request all citizens to observe these days by wearing a poppy and making contributions to this worthy cause.
That's a nice one.
Lady John, I will present that to you. Okay, thank you, ladies, and my scout troop is there to assist in any way they can.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay, I do have a proclamation for Rain Barrel Month. Is anyone here for Rain Barrel proclamation? Well, that's a long one, so just be aware that it is Rain Barrel Month. Thank you. And if you'd like to read it, it is in the packet. So I'll move on to, I'll entertain a motion to approve a resolution approving a settlement agreement relating to the completion of public improvements for the Blackberry Woods subdivision and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute.
So moved. Second.
Comments or questions? Yes. Roll call, please.
Bilshuski.
Aye.
Funkhauser.
Aye.
Trulis.
Aye.
Pocher.
Aye.
Readers.
Aye.
Motion carries.
I will entertain a motion to approve an ordinance abating special service area taxes for special service area number 2003-101 Windet Ridge Project and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute.
So moved. Second.
Comments or questions on this? Bart, how much are the taxpayers in Windet Ridge going to be saving?
I believe the first dollar amount is $315 annually, but it increases over time.
And they will be getting a rebate check for the first year, will they not?
Yeah, the way the abatement timing works out, you have to make the payment for the first year, but then we cut your rebate check right after that, and then the savings is baked into your tax payment going forward.
And looking at SSAs is something that we do all the time. We're trying to refinance these and save people as much as we can. Nice work on that one. Roll call, please.
Bilshuski.
Aye.
Funkhauser.
Aye.
Truist.
Aye.
Wiltshire.
Aye.
Frieders.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to Public Works Committee, I will turn it over to Alderman Frieders.
All right, I make a motion to approve a resolution in support of the Wyland Mayor's Challenge for Water Conservation and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute.
So moved. Or second.
Second. Comments or questions? This is something that we do yearly to help promote water conservation. So you can actually win prizes. I think last year we came in 5th nationwide for a community our size. So keep conserving water because it is running out in our aquifers. Roll call, please.
Funkhauser.
Aye.
Truist.
Aye.
Wiltshire.
Aye.
Frieders.
Aye.
Bilshuski.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, no Economic Development Committee or Public Safety Committee report. I will turn it over to Alderman Milszewski for the Administration Committee report.
Well, we don't have a motion.
We don't, it's more for discussion, if anybody's had time to
Do we want to do the
read.
one with the motion first?
And if you-
Okay.
Your
Let's-
show.
Well, thank you. Let's go on to the second one for the insurance renewals. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve a contract for the renewal of existing HMO and PPO plans with Blue Cross Blue Shield, to approve a contract for the renewal of the Blue Cross Blue Shield dental plan, to approve employee HRA card amounts in the same amount as fiscal year 2019, and to authorize non-union employee contribution percentages in the amounts of 9% for HMO coverage and 11% for PPO coverage, and with union employee contribution rates in the amounts as authorized by the Police Department and Public Works union contracts.
Comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Truist.
Aye.
Wiltshire.
Aye.
Frieders.
Aye.
Bilshuski.
Aye.
Funkhauser.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, then our first item was the sale of 111 West Madison Street, the old jail, which we just got our 2 proposals open tonight.
I mean, obviously, no one really had much of a chance to look at it yet. Did you want to bump that to the end of the agenda and maybe take like a 20-minute break and then come back and discuss it? Or just bring it back in 2 weeks? Or is anyone from the public, have you read through it yet? Do you want to make any comments? How do you guys want to play this?
Can we look at we just have like a quick 5 or 10 minute discussion on first opinions?
Yes.
Bring it back in 2 weeks?
That's fine.
Or
Yep.
first meeting?
Yeah, so whoever wants to open the floor is more than welcome.
I have a question for Mark, if I could. So we're chatting, I know per your emails you mentioned that there were some other potential proposals that had some timing issues that they were concerned about that. When we talked, you had mentioned that there's no negative or positive about, the potential if we extend this to see if they come in. Obviously, if we wait 2 weeks on these 2 proposals, if somebody else brings them in, is that something that, from what we said, there's no issue if we hear those other proposals or, read through them. I don't know if that's anything that the rest of the council members want to hear or listen to, but that's.
Are they still pending out there?
There were 2 that I expected to come in that were maybes, local entities that are not included within here. And then there were 2 from Landmarks, Illinois, that said that they were interested in providing a proposal and didn't think they'd be able to meet the deadline. I'm not sure if the one from Chicago is one of those 2 entities. That's something I'll follow up with Landmarks, Illinois on. And so, yeah, so these 2 were, I knew one of the entities, they took a tour. Chicago entity I had not heard of prior to today's proposal.
I think out of respect for the 2 people who follow the instructions, we talk about these 2. And if we say we shoot down both of these, or tear down both of these, then we can open it back up or make a final decision. But I'd be more inclined to just go with what was provided with the timeline maybe I'm still wounded because I was just turned down because I missed the date on our RFP. So, but that's just my personal opinion.
If you don't mind, just,
Go ahead.
can we just dialogue
Yeah.
on this for a minute? With that, yeah, I agree. We've got two that we're in on time. The other two, so if we talk about this now and we talk about it over the next 2 weeks, you know, in terms of reviewing them, if they come in, would you actually open those, or would those just stay sealed or discarded?
You know, at this point, since we don't have a formal RFP out, I probably would open them and read them, and then I would, make a decision after the fact. So I think the TIF law and even the traditional property sale municipal code laws give you some flexibility in deciding, you know, with a redevelopment proposal. So I don't see any harm in seeing what comes in additionally to vetting these.
This is not your lowest bidder, or in this
Right.
case, the
We're
highest
receiving
bidder.
proposals
There's
on it.
far more consideration on this than would ordinarily be in the sale of property.
And I just want to make it very clear, I'm not trying to discount the two proposals that we have by any means.
You
I
have
just
it
know
right.
that we had the other two that potentially were coming, and so while we're talking over these, I wanted to have that dialogue first before we got into the weeds on these.
Yeah, I mean, my initial reaction would be if somebody came in and said, I'm gonna offer $1,001 plus whatever this other person has done, you know, I probably would say, you know, here it is, but, you know, we probably shouldn't give this too much credit. But if somebody came in with a, you know, a much better proposal, I would bring it to you and say, you know, maybe we should look at rejecting all proposals and then rebidding it, encouraging all three proposals to refine and then resubmit.
Robin, do you have something?
Yeah, I just want to let you know, one of the companies that submitted a proposal is here tonight. Over here, if you want to ask any questions.
Well, I'd love to hear from you if you want to step up and say anything, it's up to you.
Sure.
And you are?
My name's Peter McKnight.
Oh, okay.
I'll sign in for you. And I'm originally from western suburbs, Glen Ellen, unincorporated area. So this area I'm familiar with, and so I'm from South Carolina now. But anyway, I'd like to, basically, I'll answer questions. I don't know exactly what you want from me other than what I proposed in writing. I don't want to contradict what we've done, so by doing a mistake. But we're obviously interested in maintaining and restoring the building. It's a very difficult process. The way that structure was built lends itself not to a whole lot of options. Even tearing it down would be a serious endeavor, and we don't want that to happen.
Now, you've toured the facility? You've toured the building?
Yes, sir, I have.
Does anyone have any questions, in the public?
Sure.
Good.
Yeah.
Top of your head, what is the ratio of private to public funding you think will make this entire thing?
We need to get a number that, the best answer to that would be, what is our revenue stream, projected revenue stream from these, and whether or not our proposals are going to be accepted by the city in these uses. You know, if we have apartments, there's 3 or 4 legitimate and easy, or relatively easy ways to do it. And we're concerned that what are the going rental rates for a couple of residential units, or maybe even 3, and 1 light commercial use. And so what is the revenue stream of that? And then if we're doing it for a for-profit element, you know, how much of a note can we carry with that? And so anything more than that, we're going to look for outside sources. And we have some expectations from the TIF that is, I compliment you all on your frugality and your watching the taxpayers' money, but it's an unfunded TIF at the moment. So, you know, but we're going to look forward to that. That would, and as we said, we expect that to be a significant portion of that. It's a bad answer for you. I apologize.
But it's honest. When you're up here sometimes saying, I don't know, is somehow a bad thing, but isn't I don't know better than...
Right, if you want a number.
And then my next question is there a possibility that some words were left off of this? The last sentence of your site plan says, our architectural consultant has suggested a single-use gastropub, I'm assuming it means or microbrewery, but there's no period.
Yeah,
Is your reference to
that
apartments-
certainly was lost.
Was your reference to apartments supposed to go right there? Because I don't notice a residential description.
No, if it was a single use, it would have been just that microbrewery. And the only reason, we would love that, it'd be, and some of that build out we'd be negotiating with the tenant, because I'm not gonna be brewing beer, okay? You don't want my beer anyway, okay? So, but if it were to be something like that, we would then be able to seek out financing from a legitimate tenant. So a bunch of that build out would be done in that manner. So, and this is the architect that we spoke to had just attended a symposium on how to deal with historical buildings, and that was one of the highest and best successful uses, and that's why that was included in there.
Can you name the architect?
Kevin Klimek, and he's with Papa George Haynes. He's named in here as a consultant, but they have not signed on to participating with this. There's a lot of architectural work that's already been done that's well done. If we would only seek him out as if that was that single-use tenant. Yes.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So then your pro forma, which would come after we accept your offer, you're going to have side by side.
This was because it's an unfunded TIF.
Yeah.
We are concerned. I could throw you out something, and it just would. We need to speak to you all in a regular. We need to sit down and do some planning in order to go forward on this. This is not. If we don't get a serious commitment on the part of the city and it comes to assistance, and we have to make sure that what was identified by the inspector, Peter, if that's all the remediation that's done. We're prepared to do that, and that's budgeted in it. But if there's more that we don't know about, that's another story. And if we can't be surprised with that. But we are, and we're prepared for the remediation that was identified by the inspector, and we recognize that. So, but you had a question.
Yes. If this goes through and you're going to be our person to work on this building, are you looking to get it and keep it? I understand it's lagging being on the National Register of Places. It never got followed through, or the paperwork hasn't been filed. Are you willing to go ahead and get that on there?
We are looking to make sure that, try to work with the landmark, I believe. Landmarks. And we are attempting to, we would make sure the exterior was as close as possible to that, within reason. There was someone who just told me that it was a cast iron roof, and I don't think we'll do that. It might be a metal roof that gets returned in the historic portion. So our goal is to get it on the street. The last two projects I've done have been individual homes of restoration in a historic district in South Carolina, in Spartanburg. And the one home was brick, the other one was wood, so I have a lot of familiarity with adhering to the rules.
But someone needs to go ahead and start pursuing this paperwork. I don't know where you are, Johanna. I thought by now we would have had a first draft or something, and if you understand, nothing's been put in about it, so.
I understand.
I know, do you have someone that would be able to do the paperwork and get this going so you can get on?
We've had preliminary conversations. I have an attorney brother that if you have a point person, Cornelius McKnight would be that one at this point. So I've actually, seems to be a lot of people that are willing to at least assist and point us in the right direction when it comes to this. Anyway.
It's going to go in tomorrow. I have to finish time.
Okay. I know you've been working on it, but I just thought you'd be farther. It would have been better.
So looking at this, I'm just trying to get through it kind of quickly here. So you have a general idea of what could be used for based on market analysis and what we use. Your budget that you have $480,000 that's in here. Now, if you're doing residential above and some type of commercial below, basic commercial, basic, not a big deal, but if you're putting in a restaurant, that type of thing, this is going to go more than that. And this doesn't include that type of buildup. This
Well,
is-
it does include the fire suppression system because you all identified it in the requirements in this. And that might be something the price could be reduced depending on your demands from that. I mean, obviously, and that's an expensive number as well.
But this is a generalization of bringing things up to code, making them inhabitable, close
Yeah,
that type of thing.
you know-
If there anything that's specialty, in terms of a restaurant, you say roof club, gastro club, that could generate a lot more fees.
Yeah, but in all honesty, that would be billed out, we would build the suit, and then we would get funding from, obviously we'd have somebody who was financially viable to do it. And we probably would get a lending institution to pay for that build out, and that would be part of it. So I don't think I see that being part of a concern for either the city, the government, or for us, if it were to be some ideal space like that.
I'm just thinking, is it going to be additional potential for TIP funds that would be put onto this? Obviously, if you're going to be looking for TIP funds, you want to try to incorporate everything.
Sure.
We know how that goes. So if there's going to be more, how much more it goes to? That's just where I'm going with that one.
There could be, but we weren't prepared for requesting that. I'm certainly we'd entertain it if you're willing to entertain it. I mean, that's.
Yeah, the comment, we expect that the significant assistance in the form of TIP grants is successful. So that's where I picked up that and then looking at this.
And I wanted to stress that as well. If that hasn't been, there's an expectation with with what we're offering in order to have TIF funding. Our lender has that expectation as well.
In order to make it viable. The TIF
Right.
needs
The math on residential units and the reconstruction of this doesn't work as a viable thing without that assistance. At least we haven't been able to make it work. So.
Peter, do you mind any questions from the public?
Sure.
Thomas, you had your hand up. Do you have anything? Anyone have anything?
Yeah, I do. My name is Thomas Machewski. What is your timeline for the project?
It's included in the proposal. So, and if you look at it, but that kind of construction project always there's a lot of things that can, change.
Yeah, I'm just curious because this building has been for 28 years, so I'm just curious of what you maybe have a 5-year plan or
Well, the 5-year plan is predicated upon a few things. And you know what? I've been in real estate since 1988, and I can tell you what, 5 years in real estate, things change. If you want a 5-year plan, I can tell you rent rolls and what I'll get from them, and we'll have an exact number of how much revenue will come from that. It's a very simple process. But if you want that, I'll be happy to have that as an additional submission. You know what? The 5-year plan is to make sure that this is a profitable entity that restores the building. Okay? So, you want me to have a crystal ball?
No, I'm just asking you a question.
No, I understand. I understand.
Todd, do you have something?
Well, I don't really have anything. I just was, if anybody in the audience wants a copy, please get a count of hands.
I have additional copies too. So.
Yeah, Jared will make as many copies as we
They're all
do.
back here on this table.
All right, thanks. And if somebody's short or whatever, we could ask for something.
Absolutely.
Hey, there's one thing that I would like to request. If you are going to put this out for additional bid, and I understand, hopefully we're going to be able to rebid as well.
Absolutely.
And will we have access to their proposals after they submit them?
That's a good question.
Yes.
Because, I mean, it is pretty unfair.
We want it to be fair, obviously.
Yeah.
That's.
I think these two proposals definitely have to take priority, no doubt about it. And we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
That was just sort of a, please
You want me to
consider
ask
that.
ball? Anyway, well, if we thank you for your proposal, and we'll be in touch. And,
I thank you for your
I have
time.
a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you going to do anything to the integrity of what it is, the jail, it's a historic building? How much is that going to be changed?
In all honesty, we basically wanted to remediate the lead-based paint in the jail area.
Yeah.
And all of the, whatever environmental aspects of that. But
have
we,
incorporated some of the leaving, like the jail part of it.
yeah, you know what? We black boxed it. We did not think that, you know, making that a residential element would be beneficial. It would be somehow a simple commercial space and not try to change that very much at all.
Right.
I wish that I had a tenant that would love to have that, all right? But I find that hard to believe that someone would want that as is. And then to take it apart, well, I think would be defeat the purposes that you want for it. So in all honesty, we'll restore it, maintain it, but that portion of the, which is the crux of what you want to restore, with the exception of the exterior, needs to be,
Well, there is living areas there already.
yeah, above,
That can be expanded and made into a.
and that we have the expectation that we would do that. You know, the residential unit that exists there already, the one above the garage as well. So.
But you're saying this, which I understand, like the cells would go.
No, actually,
Or you work around them? 'Cause
I would just, in all honesty, I would remediate whatever, what we understand to be there and maintain them as is. And then hopefully maybe there would be some sort of small, we have no expectation of revenue, non-for-profit, somebody that could use those facilities as they are without destroying the historic.
Sell t-shirts. They can sell t-shirts.
And I have one question. How soon do you think you can get that open road? Just packed?
I mean, I've seen a couple quotes, one for 33 and then one for 11. I mean, we could fund it, and this is some sort of expectation. We can pay for this, but we're looking to do this, we would almost immediately, and I think it's in our proposal that we would go immediately to do repairs to that.
Are you proposing to keep, you know, originally it was two separate buildings?
Yes.
And the part that's failing is the section that Joe.
You're right.
So is your idea to keep it still as one big building, or have you gotten that far or thought about that?
I think that the roof needs to be protected no matter what, even if you're going to do demolition of it. So that valley that is causing the problem, it's not that difficult a task to do. But, you know,
I was just curious if you're.
I hate to go back and repair, you know, do a temporary, then an additional repair, so like retaking the same
That's what I'm
territory.
thinking, if you're thinking of two different buildings, you know, is it worth repairing because it would be taken off?
I don't foresee demolition at the moment, unless there's people that insist that we do that for the historical nature. Anyway.
Oh, thank you very much, Peter. We're excited
Thanks.
about the proposal, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you very much.
Now, is there anybody here from the Perfect Angels?
Yeah, she's out of town, I believe, right? She's on a speaking engagement, we'll stop with my information.
All right, well, if there's nothing else, we'll bring this back in 2 weeks, correct?
We continue to speak to that.
Yes.
So first glance, first impression, you have one which, granted the only reference was for microbrewery, but that to me tells me that it's for-profit while still referencing tip. Then you have one that is based around a nonprofit with, they actually have a pro forma. I mean, granted their annual income is relatively small and they're basing a lot of it on donations. And the idea that they could rent out the commercial suites. I understand that everything is projection. You're guessing. And the idea that you have to start somewhere. My original push behind going off the RFP was to ensure that the city wasn't on the books. I didn't want to have to explain why our budget for roads should be closer to $2 million and we're spending $750 a year. And then we have this. I understand the unfunded TIF. I understand there's going to be a lot of unknowns going forward. But first glance, for-profit, nonprofit. I know that a for-profit business with a track record can probably secure a loan a lot faster than a nonprofit. Albeit some businesses throw money at nonprofits and maybe they can get their funding quicker. I don't know. But what we have to weigh here is multi-use with a commercial component, with possibly a residential or a single commercial, which your vacancy loss is either 100 or 0. But then you have the other one, which is multifaceted. The idea of a hand car wash sounds good on paper, but I don't know if that's something that's plausible for like long term. But then you've also got the idea that if there was a microbrewery there, is the facility large enough for a semi for a turnaround? Do we have and like, thinking about the actual use of the property, I'm not worried about a site plan being perfect or a pro forma being perfect. I'm worried about the nuts and bolts use of the property. If we're going to be having semis delivering grains and not just box trucks, that's something that we should think about before we make a decision. If we're talking about they call them community rooms or commercial suites, we're thinking about all of that. You have to take into effect that they have on their 50 grand roughly a year for the rent from the auto detailing business. I honestly don't know if that's possible. That's a lot of money for a detailing business. And if all they have is a garage, do we have too much expectation on their ability to create income to pay for their rent? Where these commercial suites are super small, and then the commercial or the community resource center sounds awesome on paper. It doesn't make money in my opinion. So when we're talking about for-profit, non-profit, for-profit is either one tenant or a multi-use of residential and commercial, or we have all protections of just maybes, which is what we had talked about before we entertained RFPs. So from my perspective, we've got relatively the same amount of information, just different approaches. And this isn't something that we can make a decision on tonight, especially since we're missing 3. But this is almost as thick when it was on our dime as it is now when it's supposedly on somebody else's, because we're still going to have to come out of pocket for quite a bit of money. So while, yes, I do want to save the jail, I still don't want to favor a jail which, one guy's estimating $500,000 of an improvement, and the other people are, I think, 300 on the other one. That plus is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Hell, just working on my basement, I went from an idea, well, I'll do like 10 grand. That's not even the closest thing to the truth. And to see 30 grand for electrical, I'm like, you're kidding. But at the same time, maybe they have, maybe their crystal ball is better than my personal experience professionally. But I think what this lends us is this is the best that we were going to get. Because there's no way of telling. Number one, what the building can sustain as far as retail or commercial type businesses, and if it's even a favorable type of residential layout. And then when, the idea about maintaining jail features, I don't know if it's legal to keep jail doors in a private residence, so that would be something we have to explore. But you have the jail, which could be residential, then you have the residential, which could again be residential. I'm just thinking there is some, we have to spell everything out here. So this didn't add any clarity to our decision. This actually just made it harder. Because now it's, either we spend money on tearing it down, which was 70 grand?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's 70 grand. And then we got unfunded TIF and requests for city grants. And then the list on Imperfect Angels, their list of grants, I think they would have, they mentioned Lowe's. I know that Lowe's and Home Depot live for stuff like this because it allows them to utilize the facilities that they have to bring their product in to build something. That's awesome. So it's almost like, wow, well, they've got the possibilities, but the city of Yorkville has to come out of pocket for 70 plus when we're talking about TIF. So I'm in the same mood as I was before we got there. I'm glad there's interest. I'm glad that we can pump the brakes a little bit. But it's going to be way more than 70 grand if it's TIF.
We have this TIF in place, and it's unfunded, but isn't it our hope it would turn around at some point when you get these businesses in? So it is out of our pocket. I mean, why do we have a TIF if it's unfunded? Don't get me going on the TIF. I mean, I'm all for a TIF that works, but we are in a hole on this one. And so, and what's sad is, now say this is a viable person and it's unfunded. There's no money there. Well,
Maybe we should
but
think
that's a whole
about
nother.
extending it. Maybe we should think about extending it.
Yeah, you want it, hey, did you got my garage in it? You can add more prep on my property. And not that I'm bitter.
I'm sorry, I know this, am I missing the point? Aren't they buying the building? How come it would cost the city anything?
Because they're asking for TIF dollars that we don't have.
Tax increment financing dollars. But technically, is it our money? I mean, it is our money, but it isn't.
How,
Kathy, could you explain that?
yes,
Here's
if,
the tip.
if the property is put into a for-profit commercial use, it would generate real estate taxes. It would generate 100% of the real estate tax on the building most likely would be increment because we did own it when the TIF was established, am I correct?
And it's in the TIF.
It is.
So, and it's in the TIF. So that the typical TIF project, when you say it's unfunded, yes, they're all unfunded. So I take a project that is producing no taxes, I put it into a profitable commercial use, and then I use the taxes that it generated to reimburse the improvement, the cost of the improvement. So the fact that it's an unfunded TIF, I sit here, everyone's unfunded until you do the project. So the question would be, and you couldn't determine what the TIF contribution would be until you know the use, you know how it would be assessed, and then you would apply the rate to what we believe would be the assessment.
So really, we're taking something that generates no taxes whatsoever. So we have two proposals. If we go for non-for-profit, it still would generate
Correct.
a minimal amount of taxes.
It depends on what the tenants are. As we
Okay.
learned with some of our riverfront buildings, if you
Or-
have a for-profit as a tenant, it creates some taxability
Okay.
on the property.
Or a commercial that is just gonna put money back in there because it's gonna go on, like, it's gonna go on, so it's gonna go from zero to whatever, and that money will go back in there, so
You would,
it's not funded.
you could determine if the money goes back in there, yes.
Right, so,
Absolutely.
So now it's funded.
so either way, either one is,
But we don't, first of all, now, let's keep going on that subject so people understand. So I sell a piece of property that has a zero base to a for-profit. I then have to construct it, improve it, and have it re-taxed. And we all know our taxes are a year behind. So that even if I did this tomorrow to a building, I would not generate any increment for at least 3 years. 1 year to build, 1 year to be assessed, and then that assessment is always a year behind. So the point of the story is, again, we go back to what Mayor Galinsky said is extending the TIF, which is what this city has tried to do.
I did want to point out, this property is actually in TIF 2, which was created this past year.
Then we're in better shape.
Yeah.
23 full years of potential revenue producing a TIF increment there, which gives us more flexibility. And I did want to point out, because we have had this conversation less so recently, but more so in the past when we created the first TIF in 2006. A lot of municipalities will go out and fund a TIF with an initial bond issuance, doing aesthetic improvements, public and private development, and a number of other projects to actually jumpstart other development in the surrounding areas. We have not done that since Countryside TIF in 2006,
We got burned.
where we tore down a building and then the economy tanked, and so we were upside down for a number of years. So if everybody was comfortable with the amount of risk on a bond issuance of various sizes, it would be something that could be done and explored, and you'd be able to accelerate some funding and some projects in the downtown.
The word that you used that made me more comfortable was reimbursement.
Oh,
So,
yes.
What I'm fearful of, and this is for you, Mr. McKnight, what I'm fearful of is us borrowing money to give to you on the hopes that you finish a project that would have otherwise been a reimbursement after the fact. So what I'm always terrified about, and that's normally when you're talking about infrastructure improvements, you're talking about like sign grants and stuff like that, it's always, you pay for it, here's our share. And then you can then pay off debt with it or do whatever you gotta do with that money. What I am not comfortable with is talking about that just yet. Because if we had 6 other people all talking about taking different parcels of downtown and doing something collectively and having an agreement in that somehow, shape, or form, and I'm not going to speak out of turn and even describe it, but I'm thinking of something. But if that were to happen, that's a totally different story. But here, you would be reimbursed after this is built, not something where, hey, here's 80 grand,
Yeah.
you can spend the rest of the, of 360 to get this puppy off the ground. I don't want to talk about anything other than what exists now, so that we understand it's
right.
reimbursement.
Now, there are, for example, let us assume in this house that I built that had a 0, and you agreed to use the taxes generated to reimburse me. I have an agreement with that promise that when I finish 3 years from now, my taxes are going to be approximately X. And I take that agreement and I bring it to a bank. And I say, in addition to assigning my rents, which you usually do in a commercial lease, I will also assign to you any dollars I get out of the agreement. And in that way, you may be able to finance a project without any obligation on the part of the city. The issue is there are many ways of structuring it, and the idea is for the city to have skin in the game, but as you point out, not to have the first skin in the game, that we would be a reimbursement agency as opposed to frontline. We were burned in Countryside, nobody foresaw the downturn, that's turned around, it's taken a long time, but there were many lessons learned. That's not to say it isn't a possibility if you have a substantial entity that can and has a financing record that can use the rents and an agreement from this city as sufficient collateral.
So does that mean that instead of just being a sale and a hope and a future application for TIF dollars, this is actually more of a sale and then a redevelopment agreement, because how they finance it matters to us, even though we're not financing it. Right? Okay.
So there are many, I guess, before you get turned away, and you may ultimately come to that, but there's a lot of things that can be explored. But it takes a substantial developer with a history and relationships. And the problem is with a non-for-profit, as much as the uses sound like, I've died and gone to heaven, the fact of the matter is that their ability to finance a project may not be as great, and the revenues produced from the project with the uses that we're talking about, which are wonderful, would not necessarily help with the financing. So there's a lot of things at stake.
Because the major concern that we've had with the TIF, we have borrowed as a city against the TIF. We've done projects basically out of the TIF. If they produce, they're going to pay themselves back. Otherwise, we will pay them back later. That's not how it works with the developer. The developer does take a risk on a TIF. If the TIF doesn't perform, well, at the end of the term, whether it's the 23 or the balance of the short, they may not get the full recapture that they are expecting within their agreement.
If the assessment is low.
Right.
If there is anything, if it's a commercial property and there's a disaster and there's a vacancy for a period of time, there are a bazillion reasons how that revenue stream could be limited without liability to the city, which leaves the developer totally at risk.
And that's where our TIF agreements with each one, the ones we've done for each of the Imperial and all the other downtown businesses, they have a recoverable that's outlined based on their percentage. They may not see that. We're not risking this on a private developer. We risk it when we take out a Countryside bond, that type of thing. We did that up front, so we took the risk there and we aided on that.
It was a different era.
It was a different era, absolutely.
It was a different era. You did it and every other community did it. It was a different era. It was a time where everything was growing and busting and improving and increasing in value. And so this city did what appeared to be a great thing.
The same thing that everyone was doing that seemed to provide.
We've learned.
And we're looking at the two proposals. Yeah, we've got one that has some great public, opportunity for how do they word it in here? Health and services that they have here. Mental services, women's rights services. There's some great opportunities. the education, the classrooms they have here, but then we also have a business that's looking to actually produce, and that's their sole bottom line is to make money. So we've got one that's a community service, which, you know, that's great. We've got some opportunities. I see some partnerships with the health department. You know, maybe the city can actually partner with them as well. But also we have a business. So I think this is going to take some time to digest these, look through them, see which business plan that we have might be more beneficial, and see how they perform for that location. I mean, there's a lot to it.
I guess too, they're both good plans, but the one for the not-for-profit is really basing a lot of stuff on grants. And we know we've gone out for grants, and you don't always get the grants you go out to. So that kind of concerns me, that, you know, money does dry up, and some years there are no grants. So that's something I think we all have to take into consideration, that while it has a really good use and it's a good plan, you know, is that going to be a steady stream for them for finance?
Also, looking at the scope of the two construction projects, if you had one that was strictly commercial, is it worth $450,000 to $500,000 to build a vanilla box to run a commercial food service company? I don't see much in here in the ways of a grease trap, because if that is part of your, if you're building a vanilla box for a restaurant or a brewery, right across the river, if you haven't met them yet, I'll introduce you to YBST. Their requirements for grease traps, they're not as bad as Fox Metro, but for a small diner, there could be a grease trap that would fit in this entire room that's required. So I mean, you have some things that aren't listed on your estimates here that could totally derail your numbers.
Of course, that's why they're inflated.
And Joel, that's why I asked him, are there others? And that's the point I was getting at. There could be more.
Man,
please.
Sure. You know, the expectations that we don't have a brew pub. This was a suggestion by an individual who's an architect who has experience in restoration and historical buildings as one of the most successful ways of rehabbing historic buildings that have difficulties, you know. And that's why that was included in there. That was their suggestion. The other thing is that a lot of these brew pubs, the SBA has become very adept at giving money out for the, I don't know why, but you know, I'm just, they're lending money for this and for improvements in tenant structures, you know, with they're actually leasing.
Right.
So
well, you do have gravity on your side, which is nice. I was thinking about that. I mean, you might actually have a smaller track because you have a hill for the water down. So I mean, that's awesome. But looking at the cost of construction, if your cost for a vanilla box is $460, $480,
well,
does that make sense for a resident?
that included two residential units, ADA compliant, two ADA compliant bathrooms on the commercial space as well.
Okay. So that's good to know. Because the other idea is it worth it to have a small commercial space and two residential spaces, or does it make more sense to have it all be, you know, multi-tenant residential? Because then, if Pete, correct me if I'm wrong, do you have to be ADA compliant on bathrooms in a multifamily?
The definition on being ADA compliant, whether it has to be or not, it depends on a level of investment, because the Illinois ADA code, with historical building, there's certain requirements if you spend more or less than 50% of the assessed value at any current time. So if it comes in and rehabs half the structure and all of a sudden the assessed value is $500,000, now the next half may not have to meet the same requirements the first half has. Right. So that's what we have to kind of take it as they propose, and we have to assess it.
Yeah. But then again, if it's residential and it's under 5,000 square feet, or either or, you don't need sprinklers. But if it is commercial and it's assembly and it's over, is it 50 people? Like, I'm trying to like spitball this now so that we have an idea of what we have to spend.
As long as they're 4,999 square feet or smaller, you're not required to have fire suppression. But another interesting issue with the building is technically two separate buildings that were joined together by a breezeway. So if he says, I want to remove that breezeway section, reinforce that wall, and that wall is fire rated, it's a 4-hour fire rated wall, it's a block wall. He has to have a fire rated wall because of the proximity to the old jail. Right. Now you have two different structures. You really don't need fire suppression. Okay. But there's a building.
These are things that I don't know the code like you know.
I'm trying to explain. You know, everyone's asking questions about it. really depends on what you propose.
Right.
Because they have to propose, then we would take it and look at everything and make, the only good thing is with the jail, the possibility of having to have an elevator in the building for a private investor is minimal.
Right.
For a municipality like ourselves, if we were to rehab it, we're coming 100% to code. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. With the private.
So there is a possibility of kind of grandfathering some things and kind of meeting in the middle.
Yeah, and the building itself is kind of, it's got that duality of use. The chain of use, it was a jail. What do you classify that as? A municipal building technically, but it had residents above it. It also had 911 dispatch out of there for a while. The sheriff's station was out of there. So it's just kind of, history of the building is very murky.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
One hopefully last thing. So also, if you get say you go, we go with a private entity for profit, are there, when you sit down and you take this bid and you start working, is it, we give a lot of incentives to a lot of businesses around. Is that a possibility that would be out there? I mean,
Yeah, I would think so.
I mean, we've done it for other
Sales tax
businesses to get
incentives,
that
business
sale tax and
districts,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, business district. Yeah, so that's something.
Okay, so our crack staff is gonna be doing an analysis, getting us some more information. We'll bring this back in 2 weeks and have more discussion with a full council. Okay? So we're gonna wrap it up unless there's any more last minute questions. Okay, we'll do this again in 2 weeks. Thank you all, that was a good conversation. Where are we at?
We are on Park Board.
Park
Facility
Board.
Plan RFP.
I'll entertain a motion to authorize staff to issue a request for qualifications for development of plans for a new community recreational center. So moved, we need a second. Second, we have a motion and a second. Tim, would you mind giving us a quick rundown? I mean, this is all good stuff. What we're looking to do here.
Well, a lot of it has to do with we're currently renegotiating the Grand Reserve PUD, and with that, since so much time has passed since the original PUD was first approved by the City Council, a lot of the parks, trails, park amenities that the land cash that we were supposed to receive has already been installed because it was attached to other grants that we were doing, or we just went ahead and did the park land cash development in there. So we're now looking at where there could be potentially some significant funds left over and what to do with those funds. And we kind of put a budget together with the parks that we would finish out and then what would be left over. And obviously we still haven't finalized the agreement yet. There could be some movement on those funds a little bit. But then this is what we came back with the park board of moving forward with the $250,000 from the sale of the Bristol Bay to the Sports Dome, as well as now with the Grand Reserve land cash, that there could be some significant funds there to potentially build a facility for the residents of Yorkville.
So potentially we could leverage all these funds for possibly another grant and maybe look at some sort of recreational facility.
I think that's like the first step is just to kind of get from an architect what would be some options and what would the cost be. We're kind of just out there really trying to guess on our own and without really working with an architect and putting something together that the park board, the city council could see. We then could see how much funds we need. And either A, could we put something together with the funds that would be available, or potentially if a facility grant came back around from the state, we could go with something bigger or whatever would be those options.
Thank you. I think it's good foresight on you and the park boards. You know, good job looking at something like this.
I have a couple points and then a question. Question for you, Bart. Where do we stand on the citywide municipal facilities plan RFP? I know we closed the proposals, we interviewed. Where do we stand at this point?
We have interviewed 4 finalists out of 7 proposals, I believe. We've met to review some follow-up questions and answers from the proposers. And I believe the next step will be bringing a recommendation for selection to the April Public Works or Admin Committee meeting. But in a matter of weeks, I would expect a staff recommendation.
So the citywide municipal facilities master plan RFQ was set in place so that we can look at the entire city, globally, all buildings, all needs, all facilities. So we've got that in the works. We're close to having a recommendation from staff in order to move this along. The intent was to understand what our needs were and what the costs were based on input from all departments. I think this individual, while I understand the fact that we're negotiating with the developer and we want to try to jumpstart things, I think this puts the cart before the horse a little bit right here, because we are, in essence, looking to kind of duplicate what the needs are. We're going to pull out one of these from the citywide and do it individually, specifically for the project. I get it. I understand it. Right now, I don't believe there are any state grants for building projects of this type available yet, but that's not to say that they're not going to announce them, because they have been slowly rolling out funds through the capital in terms of the different venues that the governor wants to proceed with. However, I think this here, I would rather stay the course with what we've put in motion for the citywide plan. I understand that this is why we're doing it, but I think this just jumps ahead of what our intent is, and I don't really think that's the best way. We've been working on our municipal facilities for a long time, trying to get this plan in place. So I think we should consider holding off on this, honestly.
If I could, just a couple points on that. One, it's only the RFQ document, so we could solicit for proposals and then reject them all at a future date. Two, I don't believe that we asked for the level of specificity for a recreation facility in our master plan that we would need in order to form the basis of a grant application for a park facility. And really, the scope of what we're looking for out of the Parks and Recreation end of it is different than what we're trying to do with the master plan. Here I would envision probably 3 or 4 different options that are generic in nature, bubble plans, some site plans on different park sites with various cost and amenity lists so that you could then take that and then use that as the basis for a grant application. The timeline that we've received back from the master plan architects is anywhere from 6 to 12 months. So I don't think that that is going to fit within the timeline of the state actually passes a budget here by the end of May. They've historically released park grants in the middle of summer, and they're usually only done with like a 1 or a 2 month period. So the intent here was to do a smaller, more focused study on different options that would be then tailored for use in the grant. And then that way we wouldn't be trying to do all of this work within a 1 to 2 month period when the actual grant application is announced, which is what happened 2 years ago when there was a park facility grant. We had no work done, we saw it, we wanted it, we tried to engage an architect to do the planning over the course of a month, and we weren't successful in getting the grant. So I saw this as doing some legwork to potentially leverage millions of dollars at a later date.
Yeah, I remember a couple years ago, Scott had some drawings of some pole barns for over here, and it was like super generic, right? 4 sides, basketball hoop, maybe a wall, bathroom facilities, or locker facilities, like a community room. It was all very elementary. And when you had the conversation of like, I remember my first meeting here was about the rec center on 47, which is now not generating any text. But I remember that conversation going, why do we want to take something that is already kind of a rec and make it into a rec center and retrofit all these uses that you now have? So if you went down the list of all the things that Parks and Rec now offers, I think it would be impossible, using a generality like a facilities master plan, to be able to have your input put into that blanket study. Because as we talked about doing this. The idea was we need to know how big our public works facility should be when our population is 25,000, and then when it's 50,000, and when it's 75,000. Nowhere on that study do I think we're going to have specifics as to what a community of our size, what they currently offer, what they could offer, what's available as far as the size of a building that could kind of melt with what they're already offering as far as services. So one is super general and gives us a guideline to move forward. One is super specific, which would allow them to, like you said, jumpstart and get on a grant. Because 2 years ago when they did that, it was very, very little detail. And I think it was Scott doing the majority of the kind of the rendering. So we had just a pole barn. So while I'm not interested in spending all of the money that you have banked from the land sale, I understand that you need to think 4, 5, 6 years in the future. So that's one of the reasons where I'm like, yeah, let's talk, let's let them come to us. This isn't we don't have to spend any money, but we do need specificity to apply for grants, and we do need specificity to make sure that it will fit. And we're not retrofitting a cinder block building off of Route 47 trying to make that our rec center. So I'm glad it's not that, but I'm more than okay with at least letting companies come to us and say, this is what your options are.
I understand this. I do. My concern is, what do we need? In the RFP, there is a line for Parks and Rec. It is in there. There is some. It's not as specific. I will admit that. However, what do we need is the question. And I know staff, they'll sit down and go through that, but what do we need as a whole, as the city altogether? I mean, if we're going to reappropriate, the $250,000 that I think needs to go back into Bristol Bay, since that was land cash contribution for that regional park, we're going to reappropriate it for another park. Because I know board member Sessage at the time, she wanted to make certain that that money stayed within the plan, in the Parks and Rec for a building. This is coming back from 2017 when she said that. I want to make certain that what we're doing is best for the city. And right now, what do we need for Parks and Recreation? What do we need for all of our departments? That's what the master study is supposed to do. I know we're trying to drill this one down, but if we go out for qualifications, we never turn these down. They always move forward. It always turns into a project. We're going to then expend the capital, the funds to do it. That's how this goes. We put it out, we spend the money because we enter into a contract. So even if we say, well, maybe we're not going to move forward with it, Mark, I mean, I understand that it's no cost, but it's actually cost. It's staff time. Staff time has to put together the proposal. They have to go through the negotiation and review it. So I disagree with this. I think that we should be waiting and not moving forward with this one just because of the fact that we need to find out what we need as a whole. I mean, Joel, I know that you want to do this. I know you said, 2 years ago you want them to spend the full $1 million on the project, because at the time they were talking only $500,000. And I know you said you want them to spend $1 million on the project, which I understand, but do we need it? That's what I want to get at. Do we need basically a rec center?
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the proposal is already done, correct?
The
RFQ is ready to go?
Yeah, I mean, the RFQ, this is what we'd be approving, is for the architects to come back and meet with them and try to.
There's no further staff time.
The staff time is the review.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, roll call, please.
Wiltshire,
Aye.
Frieders,
Aye.
Olszewski,
Aye.
Bunkhauser,
Nay.
Chirulis,
Nay.
That's 3-2, what does that mean?
You have to vote because you have 4, it still wouldn't work.
Still won't work,
No,
right?
you need
If I
5.
voted yes, you need 5.
Right.
So should I vote or not?
You can vote for the record, but it still doesn't win.
Well, what's the point in that?
Okay?
Okay, motion fails. Okay, there's no planning and zoning report, no city councilor, city clerk's report,
no report.
any community and liaison reports.
One quick update.
Yes.
This morning, myself and my 3 children took a spring break field trip to the town of Cicero. Hold your applause. To accept a National Suicide Prevention and Action Month proclamation. They actually read it in front of about 75 to 80 police officers, which they were previously giving them awards and commendations for acts of bravery, detective work, crime fighting. They also recognize they have a mental health wing, a group of other officers that make mental health a priority, which was incredibly inspiring. I attended with the CEO and founder of Hope for the Day, Johnny Boucher, as well as one of his directors, Mike Van Opel. And the response from the town council immediately following the meeting was something that I wasn't expecting. The majority of the people who came up to me and shook my hand or took a picture with me were very appreciative of the fact that we're having a conversation at the municipal level that doesn't always exist unless somebody's just kind of going through the motions and reading a proclamation. And the fact that Hope for the Day came with and said, we are the people who create these curriculum to educate law enforcement officers, first responders, healthcare workers, nurses. They create the curriculum, and they are kind of making the push behind actually having these points of action. So, number one, incredibly inspiring. My kids were incredibly well behaved, so they can sleep in the house tonight. I'm pretty sure Mason didn't brush his teeth, but that's kind of what's been going on lately. But after the meeting, as I was leaving, one of the police officers stopped me. His name was Officer Soto. He had asked me the name of my friend who had completed suicide in July of 2017. I told him it was Mike Malinowski. He knew him. He said, my brother's performed with him before. I know Mike all too well. And to have me kind of stop and gawk for a second while there's people clamoring for my attention, kind of took my breath away. So the official count as of Tuesday, March 26, 2019 is 56 communities, 5 counties, and 20 states.
Wonderful. And once again, Alderman Frieders, thank you for your work on this. Any other community liaison reports? Staff reports?
No reports.
This budget. Anyone want to talk about the budget?
It's up for a vote tonight.
No, it's not.
Okay, it's not.
It's up for discussion tonight. Additional business. No executive session. Any citizen comments? Anything that might be on your mind? Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.